His book is essential for any study on the site of Persepolis because he probably published the best, the most complete description and interpretation of the ruins, the Achaemenid ruins at Pasargadae and Persepolis before the beginning of scientific excavations at the site in the 1930s. Well, as I said as we discussed with Kirsten, I'm going to skip the Oriental Institute work at Persepolis. It's going to be a big jump because you have them here, but we know that the scientific excavations or archaeological excavations began with Ernst Herzfeld in 1931 at Persepolis, lasted for a few years until 1939. Herzfeld was replaced by his famous successor, a talented successor, Erich Schmidt, who had the fortune to marry a wealthy wife who purchased an airplane for him. In his hull, he took magnificent views of the site of Persepolis and other historical sites in Iran, published in this very rare and expensive book, Flights Over Ancient Cities of Iran. And they're all here in the Oriental Institute. And I would like to conclude with saying a few words about, I would say, less known or lost photo archives about Persepolis and Achaemenid ruins. To begin with, the photos taken by Arthur Upham Pope. And I think I heard from Professor Matt Stolper that a lady was working on Pope's, or at least some of Pope's papers and photos. Pope was a photographer, a sort of controversial man who has been the object of hatred and love. Scholars are divided how to deal with Pope. Shall we call him a great art historian, lover of Iran, or a great looter of Iranian antiquities? And you know that a large number of Persepolitan fragments scattered all over North America, not in this institution, but in other museums, like I can think of the Boston Museum of Fine Arts or the Cincinnati, Cleveland museums. They were sold by Pope. He took maybe thousands of photos from Iranian monuments, including Persepolis. But the majority of those photos are now lost. I know that he transferred a selection of his photos to the Asia Institute in Shiraz, a place he founded in the 1950s and 60s. He resided in Iran, he died in Iran. He was indeed a lover of Iran, he loved the country. And, but some of his photos had been, unfortunately, lost. I think he was a graduate professor at UC Berkeley who met his wife. Maybe she was one of his students, and they escaped in the 1920s, and they lived together in New York, in Boston, and then they, for the latter part of their life, they lived in Isfahan. Well, there are also scattered photos in Iranian archives. Once in a while you see some photos taken by less known photographers of the 19th century, like this one by Khambaba Hosseini from, you know, this ruined tower at Pasargadae known as the Zindan-e-Suleiman or the Tomb of Cyrus. There's so many photos of the Tomb of Cyrus, we know. Or this set prepared by Anton Sevrugin But fortunately, Sevrugin's photos, most of his photos, are now in the Freer and Sackler Gallery in Washington, D.C. So they are preserved. The second series of photos I know is kept, or was taken by Friedrich Kräfter, Herzfeld's assistant and architect. The photos are with his son, Heiko Kräfter, who is a medical doctor, and who had the intention, as far as I know, when I met him a few years ago, had the intention to donate them to the German Institute. And Kräfter is the discoverer of the famous gold and silver plaques of the Apadana. And these are the photos taken by Herzfeld's photographer from Busse, who kept a series of personal photos for him and who gave some of his photos to the Oriental Institute, the official ones. I could get hold of these photos because they were purchased by someone, a collector, and who put them, actually who showed them to me kindly, and who allowed me to publish some of them. As I said, he's the discoverer of 2 pairs of these plaques, the famous foundation plaques of the Apadana, found in 1933. He's also the architect who restored the southeast palace at Persepolis, or the famous harem of Xerxes. Another set of photos was produced when Ali Sami took over the direction of the excavations at Persepolis and Pasargadae with his famous discoveries. Sami was a fine man who excavated. He was a very sweet, very nice man, but I would say maybe a careless archaeologist who excavated for over a period of 20 years at Persepolis and Pasargadae, who kept records of his works and excavations. But his photographic archive, or his photos taken during his tenure at Persepolis and Pasargadae, is somehow partly destroyed, partly kept in the family, and the members of the family have always refused to show them to people. I could get hold of some of the photos, especially this one. He's also the discoverer of the famous eagle-headed capitals that became the logo of Iranair later. And yes, I could, I could acquire some of his photos. These are the excavations at Pasargadae. There's another photograph taken during Sami's excavations here, and we see him with Mohammad Taqi Mousavi, who became the director of the archaeological department, and André Godard, the famous André Godard, the French director, the head of the antiquities department and the museum in Tehran for about 30 years, and also a professor of architecture in the University of Tehran. The last set of photos has been saved because they were part of Akbar Tajvidi's archives, the last excavator of Persepolis, with whom my father worked as an assistant archaeologist, and my father kept the slides and the black and white photos, and also some drawings that they have during Tajvidi's excavations. Is one of them, and really I had the privilege to use these photos from really the last excavations at Persepolis, like this one, the excavation of part of the fortifications, mud brick fortifications on top of this mountain. And they also discovered a series of buildings outside the platform. And in one of the buildings, they found traces of conflagration, the famous Macedonian fire that burned down the city of Persepolis in 330 BC. And here's the last picture. This is the building they uncovered, excavated properly. And according to Tajvidi, this is the building where the king resided, because this is a real, like a real, was like a real house. They found a bathroom. They found at least 2 toilets and a series of small rooms here, and in one of them they discovered traces of fire. So this was just a short survey of visual documents we have from the site of Persepolis, let's say from 1600, 17th century, down to the 20th century. I think that the Oriental Institute is probably the best place for the preservation of this type of archival materials. And I hope that I hope to see all of these materials in one place and to be available for students and scholars. I thank you again for your patience. Thank you so much.